Seek creaked to and fro on the wooden chair bound by handcuffs behind his back in the dark basement. Aside from a meal offered by you, the owner of this basement, much to your chagrin, as well as asking for at least one trip to the bathroom, he stayed in darkness for the night, until sunlight beamed through the tiny windows close to the ceiling above. It wasn't the most terrible experience he ever had, but it certainly wasn't the most comfortable. He rolled his shoulders from the stiffness that set in between his blades, more so his left that creaked from the strain. He could hear the parts shift slightly from underneath the cloak, not enough to cause a problem with his mobility, but surely aware of its strength at this point. The doors to the basement opened from above, flooding the room with a spotlight from the early morning sun. Shadows stretched from its entrance, revealing your silhouette stepping in with a bowl and glass in hand. You eyed him suspiciously, a look he grew familiar with for too many lifetimes.
I promise I won't do anything,
reassured Seek with a gentle smile. He was referring to that moment for a bathroom break, one that went along without any comeuppance, except for a broken mirror. You found Seek to be trusting, at least while he was here, with no attempt to escape or flee without warning. Then again, in the back of your mind, you had read reports from Shinso's partner and their few interrogations with the man that sat before you. You carefully placed breakfast on a bench before you hesitantly took out the keys to Seek's cuffs, given to you by Shinso, who had apprehended the man. Releasing him from his bounds left him still sitting on the chair before he reached out for the bowl, indulging in the meager meal. You only watched him. He made no attempts again, even with the basement door unlocked for him to take flight. "Why are you being compliant?" you asked with suspicion.
Curious, aren't we?
He teased while he finished his meal quickly, rolling his left shoulder with what you thought was a mechanical creak coming from it.
I needed some relief, just as your friend did. Why wouldn't I be?
He noticed that look in your eye again, smiling up at you before he took a sip of water you brought for him.
I understand your suspicions, but I'm merely here because there is nothing more I can do. And I'm waiting, Pearl.
That name again. You heard that knight speak it before back on Naboo Island, and Seek calling you during the chase. He was often calling others by a name, a nickname, but one you weren't familiar with. And why, you wondered. What was its significance? "Who are you waiting for?" you asked, ignoring your thoughts.
That's a secret,
He replied in jest.
I can't give away the next chapter of this story. All I know is I'm waiting for the next turning point.
"Who are you, really?" you asked again, watching Seek reach his hands out to you, wrists ready to be cuffed again.
A very old friend,
he answered. You placed his handcuffs on with no sign of struggle. He allowed himself to be captured. But why? You continued to wonder.
There is something I should tell you, specifically you, Pearl,
voiced Seek, his eyes docile and filled with what looked like guilt.
You are his one and only. Don't forget that. Whatever obstacles stand before you is nothing compared to the love you hold for each other. Let nothing stand in the way of that. Don't let no one tell you otherwise.
You were struck with confusion before a knock at the door caught your ear, leaving Seek cuffed while you headed towards the large double doors behind you. You smiled up at the familiar toothy grin of Eijirou Kirishima, his smile and eyes beaming brightly while his form was backlit by the morning sunlight that streamed into the dark room.
Hey, Thumper.
He greeted, his eyes scanning the room before they laid on Seek, his gaze turning grave.
Everything okay?
Yeah, he's been cooperative, you replied, still hesitant about his change in behavior and his last words.
The others are on their way. Shinzo's partner returned to normal this morning.
That's good to hear,
Yes, it is.
piped Seek's voice from behind. Kirishima stared at the man, untrusting of him until his large hand gently took you by the shoulder, guiding you to the side out of earshot from Seek.
Has he done anything to you?
He asked, still eyeing him from afar. No, he hasn't, you answered again, spotting that glare of Kirishima's, something that was unlike him. Eijirou? Are you okay?
I'm fine. It's just... I don't like this. Ever since Shinzo caught the guy.
Like he wanted to be here? Kirishima turned to you, surprised by your insight before your eyes fell downcast. I felt that the whole night, you explained, agreeing with Kirishima's sentiments. He had every opportunity to escape, but chose not to. I even let him take a bathroom break. Something's... not right. Kirishima turned his gaze back onto Seek, spotting that gentle smile on his face again. The same one he wore back on Nabu Island. He immediately stomped towards him, his heavy footsteps echoing in the basement, before he grabbed hold of Seek's collar, pulling him up from the chair. Eijirou! You called in surprise, taking steps towards him before his free hand signaled you to stop.
You were right.
Started Kirishima, capturing Seek's ear.
I wouldn't harm anyone who is unarmed. But you hurt Thumper. That I would never forgive.
I wouldn't expect less.
Commented Seek, his smiling eyes staring into Kirishima's scrutinizing glare.
Thumper Pearl, sweet pea. You care for them with all of your heart, no matter who you are. You're a knight through and through. You are deserving of them. Whichever way we go, that I know.
That smile was still plastered on his face as if the threat of any form of violence did not faze him. It irritated Kirishima.
Why did you make it easy?
He asked.
Why now?
I'm waiting.
For what?
For someone, you answered, catching Kirishima's eye while his fist pulled at Seek's collar. He's waiting for someone.
Who?
Demanded Kirishima, his snarl turning back onto Seek. He won't say, you continued. Maybe we should wait for the others to arrive.
Yes, the more the merrier.
Stated Seek with his smile.
But your company is good enough when the time comes.
Kirishima grumbled under his breath before he dropped Seek back onto the chair with a rough heave of his fist. Seek only chuckled while he righted himself back onto the old chair, still with that smile, staring back up at both Kirishima and yourself. It was odd. It had always been odd for the whole night on how cooperative and compliant he was. The way he spoke was as if he was aware of what was going on. Otherwise, it was a ruse, a mind trick to throw everyone off. Still, what Shinso had relayed in his partner's reports stood against that train of thought. This man never lied. You eyed the exchange and felt the tension that aggravated Kirishima, slowly pulling him away from the man and to the side, again, out of earshot.
Eijirou, are you really okay?
You asked, your eyes searching in his.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Apologized Kirishima, his large hands tenderly rubbing your arms in comfort, more so for himself, while he calmed.
I couldn't sleep last night knowing that you had to look after what he did to you back on that mission. I can't trust him with you alone.
It immediately crossed your mind about the events that have occurred involving Seek and who else was involved. The night spent knowing this man was in your basement didn't go without digging into all the information accumulated over the past month or so. Your first stop was the Nabu Island incident, being the most major event. His capture under Kirishima's watch. Excerpts from interrogation reports had disclosed that no catastrophic event should follow after that incident. However, Seek's movements had been suspect after he had fled the Commission's building. Seek's interest in a fugitive connected to Shinso piqued your interest, especially due in part that they were centered around the man who escaped Tartarus, one that was heavily involved in Kirishima's history. His whole purpose behind his shenanigans around Musatafu was to locate this person who freed Kai Chisaki. As written in Shinso's reports as well as the interrogation reports that coincided with them. Yet he didn't make any attempt to bring this into conversation last night, or even try to dig for information knowing how close you were to Kirishima's own connections amongst the pro-heroes today. It only dug up more questions than answers. You noticed something else about him. That shoulder of his was a liability hidden under his cloak. What it was, you couldn't tell. You felt it during that fight weeks before on the chase, finding his strength surprising but waning in that shoulder, cracking with every movement he made, like cogs seizing up against each other. But you saw no signs of pain on his face or in his voice. Seek was a calm individual. Then the past week crossed your mind after learning more from hearsay. Midoriya's sudden mission to locate a fugitive that could be closely related to numerous cases, which included Sero's involvement over the months patrolling Musatafu. And then the most recent incident about Kaminari's place being ransacked.
Hey, look, I agreed to this when you asked.
You reassured while you grabbed hold of his hands.
I didn't sleep last night. I couldn't, but you wouldn't have asked if you didn't think it was important.
I should have stayed with you,
admitted Kirishima.
Rookie mistake to leave you alone with a villain.
I know you don't trust him. I don't either. But I trust you. And you trust me, right?
Kirishima smiled warmly, his hands still rubbing your arms tenderly before he pulled you into his chest, engulfing you in a warm hug. He felt every part of you against him, unwilling to let you go, while you felt his heart thrum against your ear. The warmth of his hug almost lulled you into a doze, content to be in this moment despite the circumstances that led you here. For once, you were free to empty your mind of all the questions that plagued you the night before.
Of course,
started Kirishima.
I trust you, Thumper. I'll stay until the others get here.
Seek's eyes watched from afar, smiling at the sight before he watched something glow. surrounding both of you like a shield, while it snaked between your arms and your hands.
And there it is.
He whispered to himself. His smile widened, happy to witness the glowing red threads that bound you to Kirishima with no sign of them straying away from their paths. He felt relief, something foreign that he had yet to feel for a long time. He only hoped the steps he took, the risks he chanced, the measures he needed to enact, were enough to withstand what laid ahead. He wished to save this one this time.
Thank you, 14.
He mused, content until something violently seized his mind. His breath hitched, unable to control his thoughts before a melancholic tune played in his head. His brain felt like it was splitting in two, feeling a strike of pain through his temples and his forehead. This time was different from that rainy night days ago, before he breathed sharply in pain and succumbed to the wave of emotion that flooded his head.
What's happening?
You asked in panic, turning to Seek, who writhed in pain moments ago, before sitting simply in the chair.
Dude. Hey!
Called out Kirishima, stomping towards Seek with a growl.
No more games. What are you?
Seek sat up quickly at attention, his eyes vacant, but now with a dim glow that flickered weakly. He was silent, a first for you considering how chatty he was earlier. Both Kirishima and yourself stared into his eyes, while you waved your hand in front of his face, finding no reaction at all. He only stared ahead, as if he were empty of life.
Help me.
He uttered, his voice melding with another's.
Help find me.
I'm calling Shinso.
You immediately announced, pulling out your phone and attempting to locate his number.
Since when did you get his number?
Asked Kirishima quizzically.
Since you've asked about my basement.
Kirishima eyed you in mild surprise before he felt Seek's eyes on him, staring as if he were inspecting his face. It unnerved him a little, still fueled by distaste from the man until he saw something in his eye. Was he crying?
Friend?
He uttered slowly, as if the word was difficult to speak.
I'm not your friend.
Spat Kirishima.
What trick are you pulling this time?
Friend. Kaminari.
Kirishima's eyes widened at the words and the sudden realization of the voice that mingled with Seek's. He had not been close with Kaminari's case, yet he knew of this person who was almost attached to his hip, ever since the school reunion and that Christmas at Midoriya's. Though he was drunk on both occasions, he did not forget Kaminari's +1, and their own Christmas cheer.
Where are you?
He asked, his eyes staring and searching in Seek's dimmed irises. He could see the light was fading, but it still held, flickering every so often.
See. The sea.
Uttered Seek once more with tears streaming down his face.
Home.
Okay, what can you see? What can you hear?
Birds. Flowers. Lots of flowers.
Kirishima contemplated the words, attempting to string them together, but with very little understanding of their meaning. He grumbled under his breath, grabbing hold of Seek's arms and shaking him in aggravation.
No, tell me a name!
He yelled into Seek's face.
A place, a location, where are you?
Seek's eyes, now no longer his, stared into Kirishima's, the tears unending while he searched into his scrutinizing glare.
Docks. Home. Please find me. Find.
Dang.
A cry of pain surged through Seek's head while he convulsed in the chair, shaking abruptly from the tension that threatened to crack his skull in two. Kirishima still took hold of Seek's body, keeping him seated in the chair while he shook violently from whatever had taken hold of him. As quickly as he convulsed, he suddenly fell limp and silent with his head hanging by his shoulders. Kirishima drew in a deep breath while he gently laid Seek into the chair, no longer awake or present.
Did you get a hold of Shinso?
Asked Kirishima, finally turning to you with the phone still to your ear.
Just now.
You answered before switching into speaker mode.
You're on speaker, Shinso.
I'm almost there.
He spoke through the phone, his voice with a slight echo in the now silent basement.
I've got Todoroki and Bakugo with me.
Is Kaminari coming along?
Asked Kirishima.
No. Why?
Kirishima and yourself shared a look before you spotted the concern laced in his brow. With the few words you overheard while Kirishima took care of Seek, you felt uneasy about the situation. As if sensing this worry, Kirishima immediately wrapped an arm around your shoulders, still holding you to him.
We need him.
He advised.
I think he's going to want to talk to Seek.
That's the last thing you want him to do.
Advised Shinso in return.
No, he's right, Shinso. Kaminari is going to want to speak with Seek.
You added, supporting Kirishima's advice.
His witness spoke through him just now.
Your eyes stared at Seek's limp body that laid haphazardly on the chair, his wrists still bound behind him and the only thing keeping him upright. For once, you witnessed this man sleeping soundly, despite the traumatic episode that occurred not too long ago.
Alright, I'll give him a call, but we're on our way now, so don't do anything else until we get there.
Ordered Shinso.
Got it.
Replied Kirishima before the phone call ended, the dial tone ringing through the earpiece before you turned it off, pocketing the device away. You stood with uncertainty with your arms hugging onto Kirishima's waist while he did the same. You felt drowsy, exhausted from last night with very little sleep before you laid your head into Kirishima's chest, closing your eyes a little to ease the exhaustion that came in waves. Kirishima felt the same, yet he held you up on your feet, feeling your weight grow heavier while you began to doze into his chest. He smiled warmly before he lifted you in his arms, hearing a slight groan escape from you.
I'll wake you up when the others arrive.
He suggested while he made his way to a free seat, holding you on his lap. You only mumbled while his warmth soothed you into a light sleep. Last night's information dump wasn't the most exciting thing. In fact, it was draining. It only reminded you why you hated desk jobs, but you swore in your own findings that Seek was a man who thought ahead. You witnessed it in his escapes around Musatafu, but it seemed he had planned it all. Ever since the Nabu incident, where he had trapped you somehow before knocking you out. With the beat of Kirishima's heart in your ear, your thoughts soon washed away, but not without wondering what happened to your bathroom mirror last night.